And we say good morning to a former news director from I-95 back in the 80s. And in his other job, I have no idea what he did. It was too difficult to explain. Mike Allen joins the show. Hey, Mike.
Hey, it is good to be back.
It's great to have you.
It's always about this time of year, too.
Yeah, you miss that microphone, don't you?
Yeah, I do. I always recall, like 3 to 4 weeks before Halloween, his phone rings and it's Ethan saying, hey, it's coming up on that time. We talk about spooky stories. And it was usually the demon murder case, but I think we mutually agreed that we've kind of talked that one to death, so to speak. But
Get it? See what he did there?
Talked it to death. People are dying to get in there.
Right, So now what are we talking about? We're talking about the White Lady.
Well,
right?
There's a lot of ghost stories to go around in Fairfield County. But the one that is known nationally is Union Cemetery in Easton, Connecticut. Now, for those who are sort of knowledgeable about Fairfield County, it's Route 59. And you go down Route 25 or north on 25, and you turn and go west 3 miles down to Union Cemetery. Now, we'll start the story by saying when you're at that intersection of 25 and 59, that's where Stepney Cemetery is, and that's where Ed and Lorraine Warren are buried. All right, and they investigated this white lady. So here's the deal. Union Cemetery, down off Route 59 in the town of Easton, has been there since the 1700s. They've been laying people to rest there, and they still are interning people there, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah, I want to come back to that later because there's an interesting name.
Yeah, there is indeed. So when you go down there during the day, it's it's an old cemetery. I mean, there's gravestones you can't read, and moss growing all over them and flipped over, and unfortunately vandals have pushed a lot over. But the real story that people go there for is the Lady in White. And what the Lady in White is and I've got to tell you, I have a very good friend who's since passed on, unfortunately, Sid Watkins, who swore to me absolutely that he saw the Lady in White.
Did he have an altercation?
No, I'll tell you something. He, Sid liked to party in his day. I'll give him that.
Okay.
But I said to Sid, come on, tell me. He said, no, I am telling you, I saw her. Now, what her is this woman in her 20s or 30s wearing a white flowing dress, dark hair, and apparently piercing eyes. And she just floats across the ground.
Now, in horror pop culture, that's an image that permeates the entire landscape.
Yeah.
It's something that we're all familiar with, but you'd never think what you'd actually hear someone say they saw in a cemetery.
And I'm telling you, dozens of people have claimed to see her. Right. And where they usually see her is on Route 59, going between Easton and Monroe, going between the Union Cemetery and the Stepney Cemetery. And the really famous story happened in 1993 when an off-duty firefighter was driving his truck right in front of Union Cemetery and saw a woman in a white dress jump out in front of his truck. And he hit her, and he stopped the truck and pulled over to find out, he was like completely shaken up.
He hit her?
He hit her. He gets out of the truck. He goes over to help her, and she's not there. But there's a huge dent in his truck.
Come on.
Now, this is the story. And I couldn't find any, but there's, Easton, Connecticut doesn't have its own newspaper either. So I didn't know where to look, and I was looking around. But this is legendary type story of this guy who saw her. Now, again, I know Sid, who has said he's seen her. I've never seen her, and I went down to the cemetery and spent a lot of time there taking pictures and whatnot, because they'll say things will show up on photos that you won't see.
Yeah, that's interesting, because what's weird about that is it's easy to be explained away, photo anomalies, especially people will take pictures in cemeteries and they'll see an orb, and then people will tell you it's bugs and it's this and it's that. So it's really got to be something startling for a photo to get, the paranormal community all riled up, but there's got to be photos out there somewhere that somebody is arguing over.
Yeah, and what I've always wanted to see was supposedly Ed Warren got a video of her. Now, the New England Institute of Psychic Research, which was this group he started back in 1952, had has a museum that's been closed down by town officials in Monroe, Connecticut, because of traffic concerns, right in the village of Stepney, and it's at the Warrens' old house.
Doesn't this? We were trying to figure that out. I saw him on the news about 6 months ago. Doesn't the son or the stepson?
It's his stepson, Sparrow. This guy, he married their only daughter, their only child. He married the daughter. And according to their own website, she's too spooked out from hearing stories over the years from her dad and mom that she won't get involved with this. But the son-in-law, I've seen a video of him, and he'll walk you around this quote-unquote museum that's there on Knollwood Drive in Monroe. Now, I've been to their house. I mean, back 40 years ago when I covered the Demon murder trial in Brookfield, I went to the Warrens' house, and I went in and saw some of those things. And, they play on your emotions. They're both deceased now. I mean, Lorraine,
they were dramatic characters.
They were very dramatic. And, Ed actually was kind of normal. Ed was kind of just, hang out with him, except he'd be talking to you about orbs and, supernatural stuff. But, he was just normal,
But Lorraine was scary.
Lorraine had a demeanor. She would stare at you.
Oh, boy.
And she'd talk in very decided terms.
That's unnerving. And
she would just pierce through your soul and wonder, you're not believing this, are you? You're in danger, aren't you? And I'll tell you, I did a talk show with her here in this building.
Yeah.
Actually, no, I'm sorry. It was in the Stonehouse. The former studios. I had to, it's the only time in my career, I had to stop a tape and get up and walk out and get my composure.
Wow.
Who was interviewing Lorraine Warren.
That intense, huh?
Yeah, she wore this gigantic brooch, and she was like, it was like she was trying to hypnonize me. And I said, no, I got to get out of here. This is shake my head a little bit and come back in and finish this up.
I'm going for a smoke, lady. You really pissed me off.
Bizarre stuff. Anyway, so this lady in white, yeah. So now if you go today to the Stepney Cemetery, where Ed and Lorraine are buried, they're doing haunted tours this week, for Halloween, and you'll see the white lady. Somebody's put a caricature together of her, like a model. Is right there really? By the place where they have all the gear to dig the graves. So there's a shed there, and the white lady is there, and you can go. And I took some pictures, or it's going to be in another blog coming up.
What's the distance again between the Stepney one and Union?
3 miles.
3 miles.
Yeah.
And that guy in between that stretch in '93 claims he hit her, damaged the truck, and then she's gone.
Yep.
A lot of Snapple didn't get where it was going that day. Exactly. I'll tell you what right now.
I heard, and I don't know if you found this out during your research, that there was one person who said the white lady passed through the truck that he was driving, just from one window to the next.
Yeah, yeah. And somebody was sitting in his passenger seat.
Right.
And that wasn't there either. Again, I wish there had been some actual evidence of this, or at least somebody had captured it at the time. But this is the stuff that legends are made of.
Right. That's what I like about Mike. He's not going to present things as fact if they are not, like I do. I I make up my mind that this is happening, and I tell everybody it happened.
Yeah. I think everybody knows that about you.
So when I was looking at this, I wanted to know who is this woman. Right. And there are a couple of theories, and that's the best I got. But one of them I think you can discount because there's no record of this whatsoever. But some people claim it's a woman who killed her husband in the 1940s and then was herself murdered. Now, there's no record of this I could find anywhere. And a story like that would be documented from the 1940s. Sure. So I think you can leave that one out. But there are two others that, and the one that sort of predominantly leads is that a woman died during childbirth and that she's now going around searching for her child. And that's what this is all about. And supposedly she's a woman that was buried in an unmarked grave. Now, if you go there and you look at these gravestones, most of them you can't read because they're from the 1800s.
You
and
can't tell if they eroded or were unmarked.
Or unmarked in the first place, right? And the other reason why it could be unmarked, though, is at the turn of the last century, so about 1900, a woman's body was found in a sinkhole behind the church. It's on Church Street in Monroe.
I saw a photo. Was that your photograph?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So we believe that's the remnants of the sinkhole, that they never completely filled it up. Mm-hmm. But her body was found there, and whether they knew who it was or not, that would lend credence to the thought of an unmarked grave, because like a potter's grave or something like that they just buried her without knowing who she was. So those are what I would call the two distinct possibilities. But either way, everybody who's allegedly ever seen her says she's in her 20s or 30s, with dark hair and these piercing eyes. So again, if you go over to Stepney Cemetery, you'll find that somebody has reconstructed like a doll, except that she's life-size, of the lady in white. And it's based off of all of the different eyewitness accounts. So when you look at it, you just kind of think, whoa. Now, I went there in the day, and you look at it and you go, ha, ha, ha. I could see at night where some people, would be driving along and the lights would go on that, and they go, holy
crap.
So that's the lady in white.
Wow. Now, you said you went during the day. Now, are people allowed in at night?
Not only are they not allowed, there are all sorts of warning signs about don't even think about doing this, and what I understand, if you check it out on online, you'll find that the cops do patrol a lot, and they will issue summons for trespassing, which you don't need that hassle. So I certainly wouldn't do it, but there are roads where you can technically not be in the cemetery, but you can be right next to it.
Right.
And so I tried to point this out in the blog. There's one tombstone in particular that's different colored. It's a marble color that I couldn't really distinguish, except that it's different from every other gravestone around it. And I actually wanted to try and do this myself, was to drive down there at night and put my headlights on it and just see, because it looks like if you did it just right, you would maybe jump to the conclusion, like if you're driving by and just happened to catch you out of the side of your eye, that, oh my God, that's her.
Right.
Because it's so different from everything else, and it's kind of shaped like a, woman in her 20s or 30s, but not really the gown. But anyway, I want to check that out and see that. So you can go there.
See if that's where the phenomenon comes from.
Yeah. Now, again, if you check this online, you'll hear about the red eyes. And the two red eyes, which I didn't put anything in there, but apparently it's like a bit of a spoof that people do. The locals have, and I was looking for them, I didn't find them, but these two red reflectors that they put out, different locations and move them around near the edge of the cemetery, near the woods, so that people go in and think there's red eyes peering back out at them. And you'll see this online, but it's actually just two reflector lights. But they move them around so that you can think, it was over there last week.
I would just like to go down there at night and just observe if anybody does try to come down and get into the cemetery, or they're hanging around outside, and then talk to them.
This pisses me off because there's $1 to be made in Connecticut with all these sites, and it's just disorganized. Yeah. You mentioned that Stepney does guided tours, and now the Union Cemetery, you can't go in at night. We know about my frustrations with Dudleytown.
Right.
Why doesn't just some business person come in and organize the whole thing and make everybody a couple of dollars, and everybody gets to see everything?
Does everything have to be monetized?
Well, it's America.
Yeah, Merc.
Now, you mentioned earlier in the show that there's a surprising, notable, recent burial in Union Cemetery. And you were like, well, how did that happen?
Yeah, so it's... So if you know cemeteries, and I think probably everybody does, you know that they have what you would call sort of internal roads, right? So usually grass covered or maybe lightly paved. You can get around inside the cemeteries where the hearse would drive in, for example, and all that. Right next to one of these roads in Union Cemetery is a relatively new headstone. And if you look at it, it says John Winter. Well, it is the actual Johnny Winter, who was actually an Easton resident, just like Helen Keller, by the way. That's where Helen Keller lived, was in the Aspetuck Village portion of Easton. But that's another story for another day. But anyway, Johnny Winter died in Zurich, I want to say 2012, somewhere.
I forget long ago now?
It was, and he was on tour. He had sobered up. He had been dry for about 6 years, from what I understand, and but still his cause of death is listed as unknown. I think they just sort of let it go. But anyway, they brought him back to his hometown of Easton, and his wife is buried with him there. And if you look, and there's a picture on the website of it, but some people, you leave trinkets, at gravestones. I think, all of us have done that probably from time to time, depending on what we know of the person. And there you'll see a harmonica and a cassette tape. And I'll tell you, I was so tempted to go home and get my cassette recorder and come back and just flip it in and see what was on it. But
right.
I said, better let it be. But it's still an active cemetery from the 1700s, which you don't find a lot of those in Connecticut.
Right, and to have somebody recently buried there, that's maybe he, I don't know. Should I tell my Johnny Winter story here?
I told Mike, but tell it again.
This is probably, now that you're saying the year that he died is 2012, then it had to be 2011, 2010, not long before he died, because he was dry at the time. And I have a friend who's friend with Scott Spray, who was Johnny's bassist at the time. Scott, by the way, has 3 fingers on one hand and is a world-renowned bassist and loves jokes about being missing digits. He just has a good sense of humor about it.
Yeah.
So my buddy Brian says, come down, hang out with Scott and I backstage. You can meet Johnny. We'll do the whole thing. Johnny was no fun. Johnny sat there and he chain smoking cigarettes in his RV. He didn't have like a big tour bus or anything. And he's shirtless. And someone pulls me aside. I talked to him for a couple minutes, and they pull me aside and say, you got to convince Johnny to put a shirt on before he goes on stage. He's going to go out with his man breasts on stage, and we need you to... And I'm like, this is a goof. Like, they do this to somebody at every show. But they convinced me, no, this is really... Please, nobody wants to tell him. And I said, I'm not telling Johnny Winter that he has man breasts. Long story short, he was boring. They convinced him to put a shirt on, but then... He's legally blind, and the opening chord, we're front row, and Johnny goes running for the edge of the stage, and Scott rescues him with his 3 fingers by grabbing him by the back of the neck. Otherwise, he would have landed in our laps.
That could have been biting.
That's my Johnny Winter story.
Yeah, great story.
Yeah,
great story. Yeah. So anyway, it's and those are just 2 cemeteries. I mean, Ethan, you remember the old radio station where we used to broadcast from? That was haunted.
That's it was.
That's we had more people on staff who will swear that was a haunted building. Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you brought that up. Did that haunting come after Lorraine Warren visited?
No, it was actually before that.
Prior to that.
Yeah.
Did she feel anything when she visited you?
I didn't ask her. I did mention that we had a couple of situations, but I didn't want her exploring.
Yeah.
Well, good move.
We need to, because it's come up in our last 3 Halloweens with Mike here, the Ed and Lorraine Warren angle has come up in some form or fashion. We should probably do an entire Ed and Lorraine Warren day with him.
I was thinking the same thing, because don't they have an occult museum?
Yeah, that's the one on Millwood Drive in Stepney portion of Monroe. Yeah,
the Annabelle
It's
doll.
closed though. Yeah. I mean, if you go there, you will get arrested. And apparently people would go up and just start knocking on neighbors' windows and doors and saying, "Where's the museum?" Because if you don't know it, I mean, you'll know it now because there's no trespassing signs just plastered all over the place.
These paranormal people can't get in anywhere. This is their passion, and they're not allowed to go anywhere.
Yeah.
They'll break in.
Yeah.
I've talked to all of them. They'll go into Fairfield Hills and run around. And they all get away with it. If I go, everybody's like, you got to go. If I go, I'm getting arrested.
You don't need to be arrested.
I will be arrested.
Yeah.
I never don't get caught. I'm
just
always
a real quick rewind back to the Stonehouse before we go. There was a story, and it wasn't a story. It happened. When Pam was on, she was doing overnights at the time, where some guy tried to climb up one of the gutter situations to get into the building. Now, I don't know what his intentions were, but I do know this for a fact. My life was threatened when I was doing evenings. I got a call from a guy on the phone. He said he was gonna kill me after my shift.
What?
Yeah. And I called Brookfield Police. They were great. They came over. I had the van that evening. I was taking the van home. And before I got into the van, 2 officers would go up to the van. They had their revolvers. They had their guns drawn.
Oh, my God.
Looking into the van before they would let me get in. So
that's who you wanted to.
That was kind of scary.
A friggin' SWAT escort to get home.
Wow.
I mean, I know we played that one Skynyrd song. I don't think that's any reason to want to offer.
Give me back my bullets.
Wow.
Mike, this has been a pleasure.
Hey, as always, guys.
And again, go check out the article about the Union Cemetery and the Lady in White. It's available right now on I95rock.com. and on the I-95 Facebook page. So share it like crazy, especially if you're a paranormal person and you have paranormal friends.
That's right. And speaking of paranormal, real quick, we're going to talk to, I think it's David Schrader is his name. He's the lead investigator for the Holzer Files, which is a show on... Discovery, yes, about paranormal activities. This is what this show is all about.
We're doing it up big.
We'll do that tomorrow.
All right.
Outstanding.
Thank you, Michael.
Listen. Hey, gents, as always, good to see you.
All right.
Take good care.